Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to the Honest Business Podcast. I hope you are very well. I am here today with a mid-year check-in, but more so, we're going to talk about 5 questions for you to double your productivity in the second half of this year. So, I hope you have had a fabulous start to the year. And I know many of you have. I've got many, many clients who've said, I have had the best time ever. I am doing really well. I have ticked off loads of stuff. I have made things happen, and I'm really celebrating that. If you have had a shit start to your year, please do not worry. We have got lots of things and lots of time for you to change that. And often some of that is if you've had a really crap time, it's often not your fault. So give yourself some slack. Don't beat yourself up. Remember that it is not your fault most of the time. But there's also some of us who are sat there thinking, actually, do you know what? I've been a bit lazy. I haven't really done what I said I was going to do. I'm kind of just a bit all over the place, and I need a bit of kind of guidance, and I need to kind of get things going and kind of pick the pace up. So wherever you're at on that spectrum, welcome to the episode. Welcome here. Let's spend a bit of time. I'm going to keep this super quick. It's going to be an interactive episode today, so I want you to get your pen and paper out. If you're driving, don't listen to this. I think maybe come back to it because I want you to actually do something whilst we're talking. This week, when you're listening to this, is when I am doing my mid-year reviews with most of my clients. So if they are a one-on-one client or if they're in year of clarity, we tend to do a kind of mid-year checkpoint of where are they at, what's going on, how's the last 6 months been. What I'm going to do today is I've got 4 questions that we need to touch on before we get to the productivity section, but we're mainly going to focus on how do we actually double your productivity? How do we get through more stuff in the second half of this year that maybe you have done in the first half to really end the year on a high? So we're going to just go through 4 questions, first of all, that are kind of a bit more generic before we get into the kind of crux of the video, of the podcast. So super simple. What have you achieved? I want to know from the start of the year, what have you achieved so far? Bullet points really fast. Bang, 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 bang. This is what I've achieved. I then want you to do what hasn't happened yet. So what hasn't happened that you wanted to happen this year, and get that listed down. Really fast, really clear, those 2 kind of pieces. What have you achieved? What hasn't happened yet? I then want another section that is what has felt good and what hasn't. So again, 2 sections. This has felt good, this hasn't. In this box, I want you to write things that you do in your day-to-day, business tasks, areas of business, clients you've worked with, projects, people that you're interacting with, networking, events you've been to, anything that you can think of what has felt really good, what hasn't. Team issues, systems in the business, how you're showing up, how are you managing your leadership, how are you growing, what has been really good for you in terms of the support you have around you, what has felt good and what hasn't. And if you can, I would go particularly to the ones that hasn't felt good, although you could do them with both sides, would be great. I want you to go down a question of why. So for each of the points you put, I want a why answer, why hasn't X thing felt good? What about it didn't work? What about it have you not kind of felt aligned to? And go around and list all of these pieces out. It's a really great exercise for you to do, to just see on a sheet of paper, wow, this is the last 6 months for me. This is what's felt good. This is what hasn't. Feel free to kind of pause and stop and start this episode if you need to. Hopefully this should be a short episode, but I'm hoping you're going to have tuned in and you're going to be doing this together with me. And then the 4th question in this initial section for us to kick the episode off is, where do you want to be by the end of this year? So if you're watching this and listening to this whilst the episode came out, by the end of 2024, where do you want to be in your business and in your life? If you're listening to this in 5 years' time or whatever, put whatever year it is. Where do you want to be by the end of this year? And get clear. I want super specifics on that. How many clients have you got? What's the revenue of the business looking like? Who's in the team? Who's not in the team? Who's moved on? Who are you adding? What's your support system look like? What does your day-to-day look like? How are you feeling? How many days are you waking up with an alarm? How many days are you not? Who's in your circle of communication every sort of week or every sort of month? Where do you want to be by the end of the year? And again, super fast things. I think sometimes with this stuff, we take ages with it. It doesn't need to be. I just need fast kind of bullet points, putting down thoughts, feelings, what comes up. So hopefully you've now got on one sheet of paper what you've achieved, what hasn't happened yet, what has felt good, what hasn't. Where do you want to be by the end of the year? And that should be a really nice one pager for you to be able to just pick up and go, cool. Yeah, that represents to some degree how my last 6 months has been. How does that feel? I want you to just think about in your body. Now you've done that, how does that feel? Have you got excitement? Have you got butterflies? Are you feeling frustrated? Is there kind of resistance there? Is it feeling anxious? Are you like feeling conflict? Like, how are you feeling about what you've just displayed? We're now going to move to 5 questions that we're going to answer, that you're going to dive into and explore, which are going to help to double your productivity in the second half of this year. Now, I want to preference this. In order for these questions to do that, in order for them to really impact your productivity, you need to come into this exercise with this understanding of, I want to find these answers out, and I want to therefore act upon them, and I want to move beyond whatever it is that I've written. Come into this with an open mind, an open space, an open desire of, okay, let's look at this objectively, and let's commit to not following the same patterns that I am following right now. For some of you, that's going to be that you've been following them for years and years and years, even decades. Some of you, it's like, I've only recently slipped into this somehow. If you are someone who normally is really productive, and then maybe for 6 months you just felt like you've been in this funk and you've been sort of like not in your usual state, now is the time to end this. We're not doing it anymore. Like, line down the middle, draw a physical line in your notebook and be like, it stops now. It ends here and now. Let's go into these 5 questions. So, another sheet of paper. I want you to be really, really honest with yourself. Number 1, where are you putting off? What? That was so annoying. Start the first question off wrong. What are you putting off / avoiding? And get really clear with yourself. What are you putting off / avoiding? I want things you've been putting off this week, I want this month, I want this year, and I want this decade, because we've all got stuff that we've been putting off for bloody ages and ages and ages. What are you putting off? What are you avoiding? I'm talking about work you need to do, things that you need to address, conversations you need to have, events you want to attend but you haven't ever gone to. Like, where are you putting things off and avoiding things that you know actually would benefit you? Certain marketing platforms you want to get involved with. Maybe there's certain opportunities that you've never put yourself forward for but actually would love to do. What have you been putting off / avoiding? Then, the next step, and this is where I want you to really be honest as well with yourself. Question 2. Where have you half-arsed stuff? Where the last 6 months have you just been half-arsing things? Have you just been sort of plodding along and just sort of like la-di-da and all fairy and just kind of like going along? And if anyone is wondering what on earth I'm talking about when I'm saying where have you half-arsed stuff, what I mean is where have you kind of not given something 100%? Where have you given it 50% of effort, of attention, of kind of momentum? Where have you sort of, you've done something, like you're not going to put it on the list of what you've been putting off and avoiding because you have been doing it, but where have you not done it to the amount of sort of success that you could have done? Or where have you the effort not been there? Or where's the execution not been there? So for most people in that box, it's going to be something around their marketing. Often it's, social media, some sort of video thing, some sort of thing where they've still done it. Like, they can't argue and say, well, I haven't been on social media for 6 months, but they haven't actually been doing it with a solid strategy or a solid plan, or they haven't been implementing specific pieces of content from a strategy that they know they could have done better. Like, where have you half-assed stuff? Where have you not actually fully done and committed to what you could have done? And be open. Like, let's get as much down as you can. And I think for a lot of us, we can always put stuff on here. because it's inevitable, right? We can't always be 100% at everything all of the time. So it's not that we're trying to get nothing on this list. It's just about us really identifying things on there. Now, the reason that I get people to do this, and the reason that that question itself is important, is because if you are operating in your business and you come to me and you say, I want to grow, or I want to do this, that, and the other, but we're doing all the strategy, we're doing all the things, I don't understand what else I can do, I don't understand what I'm missing. Often the answers lie in what you wrote in that box. What are you half-arsing? Yes, some of it will be that you just don't have certain strategy for certain things, or you don't have attention or knowledge or something in that area. But the majority of the time, especially if you're a seasoned business owner, it's what's in that box. Where are you half-arsing stuff? Because the reality of it is if your sort of direction is you want to grow the business and therefore you want to kind of grow your audience and you want to sell more and you want to build your market and brand awareness, if you then have a bit of a half-assed attempt at social media or whatever platform you've chosen, the two goals don't align. Like, they really do not align. You cannot have this huge, massive goal of like brand awareness and build an audience and then produce content it's all right, but it's not great. And I think this is where the disconnect comes for most business owners, because I'll hold my hands up and say, this happens to us all the time. Like, this is what we're always toying with backwards and forwards. Like, forever, we're on this sort of seesaw and this weighing scale of where does the time go? Where's the attention go? What is the goal? Who's the priority? Where's it shifting to? Where do you put the most resource to? So you're not a bad business owner if this is like a light bulb and you're like, God, this is us. We don't do X, Y, and Z thing. Everybody's dealing with this all the time. This is what I spend most of my time helping people to kind of figure out and reallocate and work out where they're going. But it's just helpful for you to open your eyes to say, okay, well, the reason certain things are not happening at the speed you want them to, or the kind of way that you want them to, is often because what have you half-arsed? Like, what is not 100% there in terms of execution? What haven't you really delivered on that you need to? Now, the issue with this often becomes that sometimes it's that you're doing like a key part of the strategy really well, but there's like tiny little bits that have been missed. And you think, oh, well, it'll be fine because I'm doing this really good piece here. And what happens for the majority of the time is you need those other little bits that help the magic to happen. And so you end up where you're frustrated and you're annoyed because you're like, oh, this is just not quite working. It's like, well, yeah, but we know why that's not working. And I do spend time where I will say to someone, someone will come to me and say, and present of like, I don't understand, I'm really frustrated. This is like, oh, this hasn't happened. And I literally sit there and go, we know why that hasn't happened. That was never going to happen because you couldn't commit to doing X, Y, and Z thing. And that's a hard listen for people. That's a hard thing to hear. But it's helpful because it allows us to move forward from that. And so in this kind of podcast, I'm hoping that you're sort of self-coaching yourself to find answers that you're like, oh, okay. Like question 2 of how do we double your productivity in the second half of this year? Well, one of them is knowing what you actually need to spend your time doing versus the stuff you're currently spending your time doing. Because most of the time people are spending at least 40% of the time in the business doing stuff that isn't really particularly moving the needle forward, but is comfortable. Is them playing, is them kind of feeling like, oh, we're doing stuff, we're doing business things, it's all moving forward, when actually it's probably doing next to nothing. It's about awareness. It's about self-awareness, it's about understanding, it's about behavior, and it's about intent. So where have you half-arsed stuff? Got that list down. If you can do a why section, great. So if you've got 3 pointers of what you've half-arsed, why has that happened? Once you get that one why, I want another why. And some of you will have done this before with me. I like you to get down to the crux of why. So try and ask why 3 or 4 times to each answer that you get as to why. Because you'll start getting to really interesting solutions and takeaways and thoughts from that. Moving on to question number 3. Now, question number 3, I want you to really try and pull yourself out objectively from whatever you've just written down. So we've just had 2 questions where I'm getting you to try and be really open with yourself and in some ways be self-critical. This one, I need you to like come back into the room. So come back into the room. Let's just breathe. Let's get ready to go into this question. So question 3 is, where are you doing stuff to please other people? I want a list of things of, I am doing this, I have done this, we have been doing this, this is happening, and it's really to please other people. And this requires you to get really hyper self-aware of the business. Where are you doing stuff to please others? We're not saying that it's right or wrong, right? I don't need you to say, oh, well, we should do that, we shouldn't do that. I just want, for now, I want you to just identify, what do you do to please other people? What does that mean for you in your business? Write down what comes up for that. Some of the examples for this are, you're putting out an email every week in a certain format because you know people like it. Now, again, that could be great because you might get a load of engagement on it, or it might not be because you might know, actually, we're just churning this out, but we're not actually seeing a benefit from it as a business. And I want you to identify these little tiny things. Where are you doing stuff to please others? Some of the examples will be very obvious. So some of it is like where you're actively doing stuff and behaviors where actually it's not benefiting the business, it's not benefiting you, but you're still doing it anyway. Other stuff is going to be more under the surface. Where are you doing stuff to please other people? What is it? Identify what that activity is. Now, those 3 questions that we've gone through are very sort of granular in the sense of identifying specifics. And that's important because when we're looking at productivity and doubling it, we have to kind of understand what is going on in our peripherals and what is going on in the kind of current moment at all times. And we have to remember, as business owners, we're often holding thoughts, emotions, feelings, to-do lists, thinking about ideas all of the time. Like, we're holding like millions of stuff at once, trying to filter through it and find the thing we need at any one given point. And for some of you, you're running really fast-paced businesses with high growth goals where you're having to do this like multiple times a day, and it's exhausting. So we've got the, what are you putting off and avoiding? We've got, where have you half-assed stuff? And then we've got, where are you doing stuff to please others? The next question underneath is number 4, and it is, what are you scared of? And I want a list. Like, let's get as honest as you can about, what are you scared of? What are you scared of happening? What are you scared of feeling? What are you scared of becoming? What are you scared of having to do? Often there's a huge thing we have around, I don't want to have to do X, Y, and Z thing, which I'm going to have to do if X, Y, and Z result happens. So really list out, what are you scared of right now? If you hit your yearly goal, what are you scared of about that? Who does that mean you are? Who do you become? That question of what are you scared of, I try and write like a list, like an A4 page if I can, of really granular things. So let's just list some examples for you in case you're wondering, like, I have nothing to be scared of. I'm fearless, which is great if that's where you are. So a lot of people, it's like, okay, we double our yearly revenue, but what does that mean in terms of the leader I have to become? I don't want to have to deal with timesheets. I don't want to have to do HR. They're then scared of that because the reason is they don't want to do it is often because they're scared because they don't know, or they've got a knowledge gap, or they're like, oh, I don't know, I'm not sure. Sometimes it's, I'm scared of having more time. They're working towards time freedom, but then they're like, oh my goodness, if I have more time and I don't work, what am I going to do with my time? It's very scary for people to be confronted with the thing that they've wanted the most. Another thing can be, if you have children, it can be, okay, well, I'm scared because if we hit this goal, I'm not going to be there X, Y, and Z time to pick so-and-so up because I'm going to have to do a 3-year stint of doing X, Y, and Z thing. Like, really, really get clear on, what are you scared of? Are you scared of being seen? For most of us, that's a yes. Subconsciously, even if you're super confident, a lot of people underneath the surface are like, oh, like the insides are like going at the thought of like people being seen. Are you scared of being cancelled? Are you scared of sort of natural disasters? That's another thing. Like, are you scared of something like COVID happening again, where you're thinking, oh my god, I just don't know what we'd do? Like, get really granular with, what are you scared of? And have as many different random ones as you possibly can think of. And then we're going to move on to the next question. So the final question for the 5 questions to double your productivity. And I'm going to explain how this all links together, by the way. So don't panic if you're thinking this seems so left field and so odd. My final question is number 5 of this kind of section is, what are you prepared to work for? Super simple. What are you prepared to work for? And write it down. You have to know the answer to this because this will dictate your growth plan, your scaling plan, your objectives, your KPIs, how you run the business, how you show up, what results you want to achieve, regardless of the size of the business you're having, building, currently holding, trying to sustain. What are you prepared to work for? If you struggle with that question, what I mean is, it's like, what is a yes and what's a hard no? Yes, I'm happy to work weekends. Hard no is, I'm never working over Christmas. I'm just coming up with random examples, by the way. A hard no might be, I'm always want to be at my children's like events, school things. Maybe you're prepared to not be there for 2 years because actually you're building some sort of life for them. Like, what are you prepared to work for? What is a yes, I will do that, and what's an absolutely hard no? And the reason this is important is because if you can come to me with that answer, I can then create a strategy that will work specifically for you, and it is bespoke, and it is highly likely that you're going to stick to it. If I don't know the answer to that, it's kind of a wild goose chase because I can present something that I think makes total sense. But if you turn around and say, well, I don't ever want to work on a Wednesday, or I can only give you 10 hours a month to work on my business, but I've created a strategy where you're working like, I don't know, 100 hours a month, there's a gap there. So get really clear on, what are you prepared to work for? And this changes for me all the time. So when I first started my business, I was prepared to work for pretty much anything. And I don't mean that in terms of clients, by the way. I'm not saying in terms of like money you're happy to exchange time for. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about life and sacrifice and time commitment and what I was prepared to put in and stress levels and things. When I started my business, like, I was like, that question was just like, I want this certain life. I'm prepared to do whatever I've got to do. Now, what I'm prepared to work for is very different because I'm in a different phase of business in my life. And in 5 years' time, I will enter into a completely different thing of what I'm prepared to work for. And mine changes, right? It moves up and down. So sometimes it's like, I will do anything because I want to get to a certain goal. And other times it's like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not prepared to do that because it doesn't mean enough to me right now. Other things in my life take priority, or other things are happening over there. But the key thing is you have to be aware of where you're at, and your goals need to be aligned to fit that certain piece, and your strategy to achieving the goal needs to also be aligned to everything that we've just mentioned. So what are you prepared to work for? There's no right or wrong answer with this. No one gets a medal for saying, oh, I'm prepared to work for this, but I'm only prepared to work for that. Like, that's not what this is about. It's about you understanding with yourself, what are you prepared to work for? Again, for example, like when I was first setting up May James, I would do like extremely long days. Extremely long days. I would work into the night multiple times. Like, it was just part of what I did. It wasn't even like a conscious thing of like, oh, I'm going to work late. It was just, that was what I did. Like, I worked until 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 5, like it was, and some people would say it was ridiculous. You know, some people would be like, that's absolutely stupid. But I did that because that was what I was prepared to work for. Do I now sit and work until 3 a.m. or 4 a.m.? No, I don't. I don't at all. I can't really remember. When was the last time I did that? Actually, there was a few weeks ago where I ended up working at 2 a.m., but that was because I'd not worked all day and I had a random brainwave for something creative, and I don't do a lot of creative stuff really in the business, and this was something that was along with the story. But there's a few times a year, if I get a creative brainwave and I've got a nice bottle of champagne, I will actually work, and I was drawing something out and I was creating something. But, you know, I don't, like, that's just not in my remit anymore. Like, the idea of working at that time is not in my remit, but it doesn't mean to say that it's wrong or it's bad. It's just not where I am right now. If I was going to start, like, some huge startup and was going to get investors and was going to want to build some massive unicorn thing, I'd say I was prepared for work for that again. I would literally be like, okay, head down, let's go. And I would do the ridiculous long hour days because I believe in that. I believe in hard work. I don't believe it's a bad thing. But you have to know what you're prepared to work for at any one point. And it's not for other people to judge you. I cannot stand people who judge people for work and X amount of time and hours and places and spaces and when they do it and who they do it with. Like, that is none of anybody's business. You own whatever that means for you. But you have to know what you're prepared to work for. So, to then get this all going together, right? So you've got your answers, you've got your 4 questions on the first piece of paper, then you've got your other piece of paper with the 5 questions that you've answered. How do you then double your productivity in the second half of the year from those 5 answers? Well, you get really clear on your first is, what are you prepared to work for? That then becomes your manifesto. So whatever you wrote on there, whenever you start being messing around with your productivity, you go back to, okay, well, what am I prepared to work for? I'm prepared to work for this. So why are you saying that you're not going to do it? Why are you saying that, oh, we're not going to do this today because we can't be bothered? You start building self-discipline, you start building self-accountability, or you get yourself accountability, which for most people is what we need. We all need accountability. Like, we're not superhuman, right? We have to have accountability. You then need to really look at, how does my behavior affect the business, and where does my emotion sit in terms of my behavior? So you've got an emotion, you have a behavior. Often what happens is, with productivity, there's a task you need to do, which is an action. There's an emotion that's sitting there, either emotion around the task or the emotion that you're just bringing to the situation because that's how you're feeling at any given time. And then that impacts the behavior. What you need to do is, we need to intersect that, and we need to be able to have control over what the behavior is that we do. And so that is where you have to start building your emotional intelligence and your self-awareness. Productivity is an issue you're going to struggle with for the whole of your life, I think personally. I'm a recovering perfectionist. I'm a recovering productivity kind of nightmare procrastinator, chronic procrastinator. I had to have clinical help for it. Like, it was really hard. I will manage that for the rest of my life. So will you, most likely. We have to take control of our actions. We have to understand awareness, mindfulness, being really able to come back to the moment that we're in right now. How do we feel? What does our body need? What are we missing? A lot of the time, people are procrastinating because they're thirsty. It's like, go and have a drink. Go and get the things you need. Eat something. The reason you're procrastinating is often not because of the thing that you're about to go and do. It's because of a whole other set of reasons. But you have to be able to learn to build this control into yourself of self-discipline, resilience, keeping going, doing things you don't want to do, and handling your emotions. So you use those 5 questions today that you've got those answers to, and you should be able to start pulling out bits of things that you need to do to move forward. So what are you scared of? In that section, start linking, right, well, what does that mean for my strategy? What does that mean for the work I need to go and do with my therapist? What does it mean that I need to go and look at and learn more about? And you start building a plan together. Start identifying the stuff you wrote down on that second sheet of paper. Where does productivity come into that? Where does procrastination come into it? When do you just check out completely? You have to get really honest with yourself and be open to yourself in order for you to double your productivity. Doubling your productivity is like so doable. It's not necessarily easy, but it's so doable and it'll make you a lot of money. So it's like, you've got to then decide in yourself that it's worth doing. You've got to be like, okay, well, this is a priority, whether I like it or not. We're going to commit to this for 3 months, 6 months, however long you're going to decide you're going to commit to it. But use those questions to guide what the next steps are for you. Now, this is where you typically then come and do like a strategy piece of work with me, where you're like, okay, well, this is what I want to do. How do I get there? And then we create strategy. Or it's where you come and join something like Maze Accelerator, where we have accountability that will keep you going on that path, regardless of when you're fancy and saying, oh, I've had enough and I can't be bothered. You then check in with me and be like, I'm like, what's happening? What's going on? That's kind of one level of accountability and one phase of accountability. So Maze Accelerator can be a great option, which when you're listening to this, we will have, I don't know, will we have kicked off the cohort? I'm not sure. But if you want to come and join Maze Accelerator, you might be able to sneak in kind of whilst we're kicking off. So come and speak to me. Probably Instagram is a great way, or support@mayorjames.com if you want to speak to me about it. But that is your chance to get in for this year. And if you're committed to this and you listen to this and you think, do you know what, actually, I want to double my productivity this year, Mayor's Accelerator would be kind of a space for you to be held to help you do that. But whatever you're doing, take those questions and be really open and honest with yourself. Of like, okay, well, what's the next step from that? When it says, when are you doing stuff to please others? That will cause resentment if it's not good stuff that you don't like doing. It will therefore affect your productivity. Find ways that you're going to stop doing that, or you're going to delegate it to someone else, or you're going to stop doing it in a certain way. Where are you half-arsing stuff? So if you're half-arsing stuff, that will massively impact your procrastination. So either decide you're doing it well or you're not doing it, or be happy with the idea of, this is, 50% done is enough for us right now. Here's how we're going to do that in the least time possible. But start being very strategic about where you're spending your time and how you're spending your time, and use those questions to keep you focused on, okay, what is my behavior doing? What am I currently presenting as? Who do I want to be? I hope you have done this exercise. I hope you're going to utilize it. Spend some time now putting together some plans for the rest of the year. It's really, really important that you don't just stop here at that point. Otherwise, it's unlikely going to impact your productivity to some degree. Let me know how you found this episode. Let me know if you've enjoyed this interactive episode. Let me know what came up for you. If you've got any answers to the questions you want to share with me, any wins, any light bulb moments that have come up. But I hope you utilize this and go forward with it, because it's really powerful. Stay focused. Have a good rest of this year, because so much can happen. Like, this second half of the year is where things really get going. Like, you can really have a fun time. It's Q3, it's Q4. Anything that you've achieved this year so far is fine, it's great, but like, you can keep going and you can make incredible things happen in Q3 and Q4. So don't sign this year off. Don't say, oh, I'm going to deal with that next year. Like, no, let's go for it now and amaze yourself at what you can make happen. I will speak to you soon. Take care. Bye.